Number 1.
Jovonna was last seen in Bridgeport, Connecticut on June 5, 1981. Jovonna's mother's live-in boyfriend, Ronald Garrett, was watching her at the time in their home. The residence was located at the P.T. Barnum housing project in the 80 block of Taylor Drive. Jovonna's grandmother asked Garrett to bring Jovonna to her residence. She also lived in the housing project at the time. According to Ronald, an unidentified juvenile boy arrived at the home at approximately 10:20 a.m. that day. He stated that Jovonna's grandmother sent him to retrieve her. The boy was described as being 10 to 11 years old, African American, and had small braids in his hair. He gave the child to the boy after he noted that the boy looked like a neighborhood child. Jovonna was never seen again. Apparently, the child's grandmother, Mary Moles, never sent anyone to get Jovonna. Garrett was arrested and charged with felony risk of injury to a minor, since he gave the girl to the boy. He was convicted and sentenced to 1 year in prison. Her grandparents and great-grandparents occasionally babysat the child. There's no evidence to suggest that this juvenile that apparently took Jovonna exists, but Garrett has never changed his story of events and maintains he has no involvement in Jovonna's disappearance. Jovonna's case remains unsolved and foul play is suspected. She lived with her brother and mother at the time of her disappearance. If you have any information concerning this case, please contact Bridgeport Police Department 203-576-7671.
Number 2.
Daniel was last seen playing near the banks of Perdido Bay, Alabama between 9:30 and 10 a.m. on June 18, 1959. He resided in the 1700 block of Thrush Drive in Mobile, Alabama at the time, and had gone camping at Perdido Bay with his parents, a cousin and 3 of his 6 siblings. His other siblings were staying with relatives. The campsite was about an hour's drive from the Barter's home. Daniel apparently wandered away from the rest of his family, while his parents were preparing some fishing equipment. He was carrying a bottle of Nii soda at the time. His mother, Maxine Barter, began searching for him 10 or 15 minutes after she last saw him, but was unable to locate him. He has never been heard from again. The area Daniel disappeared from is swampy and infested with alligators and snakes. Authorities investigated the theory that the child had been attacked by an animal. They even killed and gutted 2 alligators to look for human remains, but found no evidence of such an attack. An extensive search of the region, on both land and water, turned up no sign of Daniel or his remains. Even his Nii soft drink bottle was never found. Bloodhounds were used, but didn't uncover anything useful. Maxine stated Daniel did not like the water, and she did not believe he would have gone into the bay voluntarily. The bay was very shallow at the time, and a person could walk a considerable distance without getting very wet. The undergrowth bordering the campsite was thick and prickly, and as Daniel was barefoot and wearing only a pair of shorts, his loved ones don't believe he would have gone into the bushes. After the search turned up no evidence, investigators decided it was unlikely Daniel had wandered into the woods or water near the campsite. They looked into the possibility of abduction, but they were never able to find any clues supporting this theory. The Barter family was not wealthy, and they never received any communication from the supposed kidnappers, so a ransom motive is unlikely. A month before Daniel's disappearance, his mother saw a mysterious vehicle parked in front of their home in Mobile. Maxine approached the car and the driver, a man, immediately covered his face with a newspaper, then drove away. One evening not long afterwards, a neighbor saw a strange man peering into the Barter boys' bedroom where the boys, including Daniel, were asleep. The neighbor told Maxine and they went to the place where the man had been standing. He was gone, but there were footprints in the dirt under the window. The police made casts of the prints and took photographs, but it is unclear whether this evidence still exists. On the morning before Daniel's disappearance, Maxine drove him and one of his brothers to the store and went inside, leaving the boys in the car. While she gone, an unknown man drove his car up next to the Barter's car and stared at the boys for a while without speaking to them, then drove away. Daniel's brother told Maxine about it when she returned. These incidents have led the Barters to suspect Daniel was kidnapped by someone who had been stalking the family for some time. His case was reopened in the 21st century, nearly 50 years after his disappearance. Many of the original investigative files have been lost or destroyed in the intervening decades. Daniel's father died in 1965 and his mother in 1995. One of Daniel's brothers, who was born after his disappearance, died of cancer in 1997. The rest of his siblings are all alive and still hope his case may be resolved.
Number 3.
Efforts remain underway to locate a woman who was reported missing almost 42 years ago, when she was 13 years old. North Carolina-based Community United Effort Center for Missing Persons announced this week its latest endeavor to find more information about Lexington's Donna Barnhill, who would now be 54 years old. Barnhill went missing in March 1981. The Q Center for Missing Persons this week stated in a news release that a forensic artist has aided it with drawing an accurate photo of what Barnhill would have looked like just before becoming a missing child. Donna Michele Barnhill vanished over 3 decades ago, leaving behind a mystery and a trail of unanswered questions for the rural community of Lexington, North Carolina, a news release from the Q Center of Missing Persons stated. Donna was 13 years old on the night she went missing. No alarms rang out for her, and few searched for clues concerning her whereabouts. Years have dragged on, her parents and some family members have passed away, and to date this child had not been found. The photo released in 1981 of Donna Barnhill was that of a school picture, when she was between the age of 7 to 8 years old, the news release stated. In the mid-2000s, the Q Center for Missing Persons located additional grainy snapshots, including an eye-shut photo. Barnhill's family did not purchase the photo from the school because her eyes were closed, and the photo was of poor quality. Monica Kaysen, founder of the Q Center for Missing Persons, told the Dispatch on Friday the forensic artist used these photos and family photos with Barnhill in them to come up with the latest photo. Most recently, at the request of the nonprofit organization, a forensic artist from Canada, Diana Trepkov, has depicted a real-time look at what Barnhill would have looked like before becoming a missing child. We hope that investigators working aged cases across the nation will keep her image in their mind just in case there may be an unidentified child out there that may not be processed into the system set in place for missing persons today, Kaysen said. If Donna was deceased upon her disappearance and later found, she could be one of the many Jane Doe cases in need of entry. We want to turn over every stone to make sure. Tools and technology used for missing individuals have developed leaps and bounds in the last 30-plus years, the news release stated. After Donna was reported missing by her mother, the investigation discovered Donna's sibling, Anita Barnhill, died at the age of 2. According to the news release, her death was ruled an accident in 1966. A short time later, facts of her death were discovered, and in 1999 a medical examiner revisited the child's case, ruling her death as fatal child abuse, homicide. To date, no charges have been brought forth. This information only supports that things can be missed, and more discoveries could still in fact be dormant in a file, maybe in another county, or even another state, Kaysen said. With the photo, Kaysen's nonprofit hopes to keep the Barnhill case in the public eye. The center has plans of putting a billboard with a new photo of Barnhill on it in the Davison County community. We hope that she is still out there alive, Kaysen said. Until there is a body, there is still hope. Kaysen said her center has been to Lexington more than once. She explained she couldn't go into detail, but the searches have consisted of dogs and other equipment. Captain Billy Scarborough of the Lexington Police Department called Barnhill's disappearance an open case. "We can't say she's dead, because we have never found her," he said. "Until you get a body, we wouldn't want to say she is deceased. It is an active missing persons case." In regard to the new rendering, Scarborough said he hopes it generates information on Barnhill. "All the leads we have had before have been dead ends. We would love to take the case, that is this old, and bring closure to it. Anyone with information concerning the whereabouts of Barnhill is asked to contact the Lexington Police Department at 243-3302.
Number 4.
Nelida was last seen in Boston, Massachusetts on December 20, 1976. She was last seen walking to William Blackstone Elementary School on Shawmut Avenue. The elementary school was a short 1.5 blocks walk from Nelida's residence. She never made it to school and was never seen or heard from again. Authorities and the family immediately suspected that foul play was involved in Nelida's disappearance. Authorities believe that the child had been abducted while she walked to school. Authorities created a sketch of Nelida's possible abductor. Some of the clothing that Nelida has been wearing was found in the possession of Anthony Flores, about 2 weeks after her presumed abduction. A woman phoned authorities after Flores gave her a hat and gloves. She was suspicious and noted that Anthony resembled the sketch of her possible abductor. Another witness reported that he saw Nelida walking with Flores on the morning of her disappearance. She was reportedly holding his hand. Flores was taken in for questioning. Authorities found that he possessed a fake police badge and fake gun. He was immediately arrested but made claims that he had found the clothing on the side of the road. Authorities were unable to connect him to Nelida's abduction. He was released thereafter. Although Nelida was taught not to talk to strangers and had a shy mature in 1976, she knew to and would have trusted a police officer. It's believed that Flores abducted Nelida by pretending to be a police officer. Flores maintains his innocence in her disappearance. He was never charged due to lack of evidence, but he remains a suspect in the case. Flores is also a suspect in the 1976 abduction of Cecilia Pina from New York City, New York in October of 1976. He has not been charged in that case either. Flores is currently in prison for murders he committed in New York. In January of 1985, a photograph that was thought to have depicted Nelida was found in the apartment of David R. Collins. The picture was identified as possibly being her by Nelida's mother. He was previously convicted of kidnapping a teenager from California and was also convicted of assault in several other cases. At least 25 pictures were found in his apartment. It was thought that another girl was Sarah Elizabeth Avon, who was abducted in 1981 from Illinois. The photos were later found to be someone else. Authorities do not believe that Collins had anything to do with the girls' disappearances. Nelida's case remains unsolved. Foul play is suspected, and it's believed that Nelida was abducted by a stranger as she walked to school. If you have any information concerning this case, please contact Boston Police Department 617-343-4200.
Number 5.
Rogelio was last seen in Bay City, Texas, while on a fishing trip along with his girlfriend, Betty Jean Witherspoon, and other acquaintances on June 29, 1975. He was also with Anna, Anna's parents, her uncle as well as her boyfriend, Nick Diaz, and his sister. They told Rogelio's parents that they were going to Corpus Christi, Texas, but instead went to Bay City. Rogelio lived with his parents and sister in the 3500 block of West Woodlawn Avenue in San Antonio at the time of his 1975 disappearance. His parents were unaware of the change of plans. This was reportedly uncharacteristic of him. According to Betty and Anna, they were swimming with Rogelio off Matagorda Beach, when they were swept about 300 yards offshore and caught in an undertow. Anna and Betty were rescued, but Rogelio vanished. He was never seen again. Extensive searches of the water turned up no sign of him. Authorities believe that Rogelio drowned and his body was swept out to sea. His family keeps hope that he survived. His sister and mother believe that Rogelio may have swam to land somewhere else and left on his own accord, or that he suffered an amnesia attack and doesn't remember his name or identity. Rogelio has a bad relationship with his father, and this may have been a possible reason for him to run off. His father committed suicide a year after Rogelio's disappearance. There were reported sightings of Rogelio in the local area after his disappearance. The family also reportedly got strange calls after. They would sometimes hear music and sometimes hear someone trying to talk. They believe Rogelio placed these calls. At the time of his disappearance, Rogelio had a full-time job at Amigo's food company and was learning how to drive. He had completed his freshman year at Central Catholic High School prior to his disappearance. Rogelio's case remains unsolved. His family believes he ran away. If you have any information concerning this case, please contact Matagorda Sheriff's Office 409-245-5526.
Number 6.
Timothy Jacob Davison, better known as TJ, lived in Winter Haven, Florida, with his parents and 2 siblings. At the age of 4, his parents, Drayden Davison and Deborah Delich, divorced. Even though TJ's mother gained custody of him and his siblings, she handed them over to their father's sister, Delaney Davison, who lived in Decatur, Illinois, with her boyfriend and child. According to Delaney, Drayden and Deborah were not interested in raising children. It was obvious that TJ was not being taught or exposed to much. Once he moved in with his aunt, he began to open up. TJ was a slow learner and had a speech impediment. He did not know his last name or home address. At the time, he was also missing his 2 upper front teeth. On October 15, 1985, Delaney drove all the children to the Brentwood Village Shopping Center. When they arrived around noon, TJ was asleep, so Delaney decided to not wake him up. He was asleep in the back seat of the red 1981 Ford or Dodge Omni. TJ was wearing a light blue windbreaker, blue jeans, white sneakers, and a black baseball cap. Delaney and the 3 other kids took about 30 minutes at the Kroger grocery store inside the mall. When they returned to the car, TJ was gone. She immediately reported her nephew missing. According to Delaney, the car doors were locked, but authorities would later claim they weren't. Extensive searches of the area were done by officers, dogs, and helicopters. Flyers were sent out to various states, and there were several calls from people who may have seen him, but nothing was ever confirmed. One of the first tips police received was that a man and a woman were seen putting a similar-looking boy inside their car, just a couple of minutes away from the mall. It was a black two-door 1978 or 1979 Oldsmobile Cutlass. The car had Indiana license plates, leading to the belief that he may have been taken to the nearby state. Authorities followed this lead to no avail. Authorities investigated Deborah and Drayden, but they were eventually ruled out. Nevertheless, Drayden was arrested shortly after TJ's disappearance on an unrelated warrant. He has been arrested numerous times throughout the years for a variety of reasons, including battery, aggravated assault, kidnap, false imprisonment of an adult, resisting officers, violating probation, burglary, and criminal mischief. After police cleared TJ's family, his disappearance was classified as a non-family abduction. Despite this, some people are not convinced that the family is not involved. Former police chief Mark Barthélemy doesn't think Delaney's story adds up. But he did interview TJ's parents at the time, and is sure they were not involved. In November of 1987, a lot of people thought that TJ had been found. A deaf-mute boy had been found wandering the streets of Juarez, Mexico, near the U.S. border, El Paso, Texas. He was around TJ's age and was similar looking. However, his footprints were compared to TJ's, and they were not a match. After an extensive search, he was identified as Jose Garcia. Jose, originally from Tampico, Mexico, had traveled over 1,000 miles to the border. Shortly after being reunited with his mother, he was placed in an orphanage. Due to the amount of attention Jose's case had generated, the non-profit Ears International paid for the boy to get a cochlear implant. The Decatur house where TJ had lived with his aunt burned down in 2002. In 2013, authorities dug up the yard in search of evidence. Nothing is believed to have been found. Notably, TJ's maternal aunt, Cindy Smith, vanished in 1987 from Winter Haven, Florida. Her boyfriend is a suspect. The cases are not believed to be connected. Timothy Jacob Davison has been missing for 36 years. If alive, he is now 40 years old.